Welcome to the Sage Solutions podcast, where we discuss all things personal growth, personal development, and becoming your best self. My name is David Sage, and I am a self-worth and confidence coach at Sage Coaching Solutions. Today is our first solo episode. It's going to be a little shorter, but it's a little more free flow and won't be quite as directed at one topic. I am incredibly grateful for the time and thought that people have put into their feedback, and it has made this podcast just continue to improve and get better and better. You may have noticed that our sound quality changed. We got a better mic. Part of that was on purpose, and it went with a theme of courage. I didn't want to get caught up having the perfect equipment before I started. I had a microphone, and I decided I'm not going to talk myself out of this and wait till it's the perfect situation before I start. I can ready, fire, aim. Start. Show people that you don't have to be in the perfect situation to start, and then upgrade as I go. And I don't regret it one bit. Before we get into it, our goal with this podcast is to share free, helpful tools with you and anyone you know who is looking to improve their life. So take action, subscribe, and share this podcast with them. Now, I use the term tools on purpose. When we're talking about each of these different topics that each episode has been about, I'm trying to build a repertoire of tools. Each one gives you an understanding of a topic that you can then use for when that topic comes up and is applicable. Tools are useful. Tools are what made humans the dominant species on Earth. Tools are what make us the apex predator, in addition to our minds. We wouldn't really be able to use tools to the degree that we could without our minds. But if we had no tools, I couldn't be podcasting. A microphone is a tool, a computer is a tool, a car is a tool, and a hammer is a tool. But I'm sure you've heard the saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. What it means is if you only have one tool, you're going to start using that tool in situations where it doesn't make any sense. But on the flip side, if you had a hammer, you might not use the back of a screwdriver. A lot of times there are tools that can work, but there are much more efficient tools built directly for what you're trying to do, which is why having more different tools for both of those cases puts you in a better spot. I'm not just trying to give you tools, though. I'm going in depth on these for a reason. I'm trying to give you the best tools, the top-of-the-line expensive tools. As Tim Ferriss would say, the tools of titans. My real goal here is to build you Batman's utility belt, so that people question how it's even possible that you seem to have a tool for every situation. What makes it a little tough when talking about an individual concept is it's very easy to take it to an extreme, to just think about that one concept, and most things aren't good in all situations. It's about trying to find the balance between a lot of these topics, which is why I'm going to have topics that almost feel like they contradict each other. But multiple things can be true at the same time. We can find the shades of gray. It's about how many of these concepts work together. Our topic today is really a continuation of the thread that we started with courage and action. Fear is not the only thing that holds people back from taking action. Now, we talked about a number of the things that hold people back from taking action when they know that they should. We also talked about tools, such as the 5-second rule and just saying, F it, right before you're about to do something. And about ways to pick the actions that you know you should be doing and filter it. But it's not always that simple. There are other things that get in the way. So I'm going to give you 3 major tools based on 3 major concepts to make you much more efficient and make it that much easier to to do what you need to do, to take action and get stuff done. So let's get right on into it. Have you ever heard of the acronym KISS? K-I-S-S. Keep it simple, stupid. Now, I'm not a huge fan of calling yourself stupid, which we'll talk more about when we talk about self-talk, but the general idea is pretty good. Tony Robbins, world-renowned coach, speaker, and motivational expert, says that the enemy of execution is complexity, which means the more complex you make the task you're trying to do, the less likely you are to do it. So this first tool actually comes from a combination of two separate principles. The first one being the paradox of choice, which goes with this whole concept of not taking action because you're making things too complex for yourself. Just leads directly to paralysis by analysis. The paradox of choice states that the more options you give yourself, the less likely you are to make a choice. It's a paradox because you would think that having more options would make you more likely to find the perfect thing. But that's not really how it works. There was a study done where they had pretzels and different dips for the pretzels, and one booth had 5 different dips, and the other booth had the same 5 dips plus an additional 10 different dips. Surprisingly, the booth with only 5 dips actually sold significantly more dips, despite having a smaller variety of things. It's because people were paralyzed and overanalyzed when there were too many choices. In fact, research shows that the way that our brains often look at choices is numbered like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, lots. If you can keep the number of choices between 1 and 4, 1 and 3 is the true ideal, but between 1 and 4, you're much more likely to actually make a choice. Once you start getting to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 choices, your brain is thinking about each one of those choices, and then it has to narrow it down, and then it has to narrow it down, and then it has to narrow it down. And oftentimes, in the moment, we just get overwhelmed and say, I don't know, and just move on. So if you're optimizing for action, keep it simple. Don't make it complex. Give yourself 1 to 4 options, and then you'll do it. There's obviously times where you're making much bigger and more sophisticated choices, and you're going to want way more options because you know you're going to make a choice because you absolutely have to make a choice. That's fine. I'm not saying you should never make a choice when there's more than 3. Like you go to a restaurant and you're like, oh no, the menu has too many. No. But if you can narrow it down in your mind and pick anywhere between 2 and 4 options, you're much more likely to make a choice. And the second principle leading to this tool is called Occam's razor. It's also been known as the law of parsimony. Occam's razor states, the simplest solution is often the best. This mostly comes into play when you're trying to figure out an explanation for why something works or how something works, or if you're trying to find a solution to a problem. So in order to use Occam's razor, you actually have to look at the different options that you have and think about them, thinking critically through them and trying to make the decision based off of that first. If you can't make a decision because 2 of the options are similarly likely, that's when you use Occam's razor. The one that is the simplest, that has the least complexity, or is the most straightforward, use that as the tiebreaker. To summarize how to use the first tool, keep your options limited so that you're more likely to make a decision in the first place. Then think through your options, and if you still can't make a decision, choose the simplest solution. Now, some of you may have noticed, that's why I picked 3 tools, so that I don't overwhelm people, and you're more likely to use them and take action. The second tool harnesses the power of the 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto Principle. Now, the practical application that we're talking about is that in many, many situations, 80% of the time that you spend on a task accomplishes 20% of the results, and 20% of the time accomplishes 80% of the results. Now, this isn't always true, and the percentages don't always work out like that, but it is staggering how often it is. If you can find the 20% that accomplishes 80% of the results and focus much more of your effort on that 20%, you will get so much more accomplished in a much smaller portion of time. What if you spent 70 or 80% of your time on the 20% that's producing most of the results, and the remaining 20% on whatever is necessary to make it keep working from that other 80? Meaning, you can accomplish so much more in a much smaller period of time and still do just enough of the other 80% to make the whole system work. Or in some situations, if you're a business owner, use a who, not how mindset to find people who are better at that 80% if it is necessary, despite not accomplishing nearly as much, and hire somebody to do it. Or even for household tasks. Figure out where this applies, find the ways to apply it, and make yourself much more efficient at actually getting results. And the third and final tool is based on Parkinson's law. Now, this has nothing to do with Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's law states that a task will fill the space you give it, meaning if you give yourself 30 minutes to do something, you'll take 30 minutes, even if you could have done it in 15. Now, this can work two different ways for people. If you give yourself 6 hours to do something, will it always take that full 6 hours? Maybe not. But if you give yourself 3, you may drag it out and do a bunch of other part things in between and feel no rush, which can feel nice, but generally pretty inefficient to get something done over 3 hours that you know actually only takes 25 minutes. But the reverse is true. What if you give yourself 20 minutes to get it done? By using small time frames, you can actually force yourself to be more productive by trying to squeeze it into that time frame and not giving yourself that extra leeway. In his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss actually harnesses all of these concepts that I'm talking about to create a business where he only worked 4 hours a week by repeatedly using the Pareto Principle, Parkinson's law, the paradox of choice, and Occam's razor to make himself more and more efficient, along with lots of other tools. Now, am I telling you that your work week is going to be 4 hours long if you use these? No, I'm just saying there is a lot of power in these tools, and he's a great example of what they can do at their true potential. The true synergy is what happens when you combine the 80-20 principle and Parkinson's law. When you give yourself a short period of time to compress the time that you're getting things done, and that time is being used on the 20% that accomplishes 80% of the results, you can actually get way more done in a short period of time. And then we throw onto it making decisions much quicker and not being so caught up in making everything way too complex so that you're actually taking action. By using the paradox of choice and Occam's razor, you can get a lot more done in a shorter period of time and take that action. Now remember, the information I provide in this podcast is not individualized. It's generally beneficial and helpful, but it isn't specific to your situation. Everyone should look at their own situation and understand how these concepts apply to their own life. Now, if you are looking for personalized advice and are interested in individual coaching, feel free to reach out to me at sagecoachingsolutions@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the Sage Solutions podcast. Your time is valuable, and I'm so glad you continue to choose to learn and grow here with me. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on more sage advice. One last thing. The legal language. This podcast is for general educational and informational purposes only. No coaching-client relationship is formed. It is not intended as a substitute for the personalized advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.